All right, welcome back, everyone, to the Elevated Trader Podcast. My name is Tracy, and I'm here with, you know it, Kristen Kidgel. Kristen, it is a pleasure to be with you once again. And we are continuing with Peak Mind by Amishi Jha.
Yes,
and we finished the last episode off with the first 4 chapters where we just kind of introduced what the book is about. And now we the last sections of this book is actually jumping into the tools and techniques of what we need to kind of get started and all that kind of stuff. So absolutely. So what do you want to talk about right now?
I want to talk about how fast we're talking because we're both standing up.
Isn't that incredible? Yeah.
It is funny because you usually are sitting down and I'm usually standing, and then we'll get off the mic and you're like, did you have to pee the whole time because you're bouncing back and forth? I know. I'm standing on a yoga mat that's folded in half with running shoes. Like, I got nothing but bounce in me. It's really good for my personality for sure.
That's awesome. And I'm finally standing, which feels great because, sitting's the new smoking. That's what they keep telling me.
That's
So,
right.
hey, neither one of us smoke, and we are trying to make healthy choices. So yes,
Amen.
I am standing.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Cool.
Well, cool. I think we both really like this book, huh?
Yeah, I am actually shocked at how much I like it, but it's actually I'm not shocked. I was surprised that the book would have content in it that I've always been interested in. I love memory, I love the mind, I love things like that, and I guess I didn't know what to expect because I hadn't heard about this book before. It was recommended by a student of mine. So it caught me off guard, and I'm pleasantly surprised and enjoying it thoroughly and making some changes. So,
oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. Before I've reached out to quite a few people, including my son, who is getting started, switching careers and going into airline pilot school. And he literally was like, Mom, okay, what supplements do I need for my brain? Because he's going back into school and he's been out of school for a while. And so I said, here's supplements. And then I said, and then we just started reading this book, and I read the first chapter. I was like, and you need to read this book. And he got the book and he's reading it. So he's trying to incorporate it. I just got off the phone with him and I said, Nick, you really need to finish this book. It's really, really good. And the research is phenomenal. So he's like, yeah. I'm like, you'll be blowing people out of the water with testing and your skills. And I'm telling you, because it's simple, but profound.
Yeah.
And so that's what I've been getting out of it. Have you recommended it to anybody?
I have actually shared it with somebody. In fact, I shared it with my son as well because he's still a student in school. And do you remember the part in the book where she talks about studying and being in class and taking notes and that multitasking aspect of it and how it's actually drawing away from your attention and keeping you from retaining the information? And I remember when I was going to school, I used to never take notes. Never, ever did I take notes. I would listen intently to the class and I would ask a lot of questions. So I'd be fully engaged, but I never took notes. And I used to think that was something wrong with me, that, hey, I was never a note taker and I didn't learn how to be a proper student. And I found out, I don't think that ever hindered my performance. In fact, I think it made it better. And I'm finding out now by reading the book that actually what I was doing was more in tune with learning and more facilitated more memory retention than doing what a lot of others were doing. So I talked to my son about, when the load picks up and you're going to have to start taking notes, for instance, when you get into college and university, instead of sitting there vigilantly taking notes, be very present in what you're doing. Sit up front, ask questions, because when you ask questions, you're then also engaging other parts of your body. You're engaging your voice, you're engaging your ears, you're engaging your eyes, you're engaging a lot more senses. And when you ask a question, first of all, that also gives you kind of more skin in the game as well, to some degree, because you are genuinely curious about what the answer is going to be. So it gets you engaged. And when you get engaged, that's going to help retain some more memory. So we talked a little bit about that. And I said, if you really need to, put a recorder down and record. And the other thing that she said was about, because they do a lot of notes with laptops, and it really caught my attention on how much the schools are actually requiring students to actually come to class with a laptop now, and how that's actually, the science is telling you, hey, that shouldn't be happening because you're actually causing a distraction. And there was a study done. Was there not a study done that showed that the laptops were actually causing a reduction in retention for students. Do you remember that
Interesting.
study?
I don't remember that. I think I would have probably said something, but that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I read that. And it was interesting because I don't know if it's the distractions from being on the computer and students are actually focusing on the distractions, or if it's messages that are popping up. Because, I mean, obviously, if you have an Apple computer, an Apple MacBook or anything like that, that your iPhone note messages are going to pop up, your calls are going to come up, all that stuff's going to pop up. And just out of curiosity, do you use the focus feature on your phone and your computer? Yes,
not
I
on
do
my
too.
computer, but on my phone.
No. Okay.
Yeah. Well,
I have it on my
a Mac.
computer. I don't have a Mac on my computer either, but I do have Focus. There's Focus on Microsoft. So I use the Focus. So
the first time that ever popped up, I'm like, stop. I turned it off. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I use it. So it cuts out some of the notifications. So I know when I'm working, it's learned my habits, which is really good. So when I'm supposed to be working, it reduces the number of distractions that are coming my way. So it actually shuts off some of those notifications. And that's very helpful, I find. And I definitely use it on my phone all the time. But yeah. Anyway,
I do.
I digress.
No, you don't. No, you're good. So let's recap a little bit, because the biggest thing that we talked about last time was the emphasis on finding your flashlight. And really what that was in the midst of things is attempting to be present, and to stop trying to get your brain to not think. It's going to think. Stop trying to do it. The goal will always be, and the win and the accomplishment and the woohoo, I did it again, is bringing your thought back to your breath, bringing it just to the in and to the out. Don't change your breath at all. Just being present, and then practicing and moving into some other stuff is, one of the things is use attention powerfully in the here and now. So now, instead of just like taking 12 minutes to just focus and then refocus on your breath in and out, it's okay. Now do the same thing while you're brushing your teeth. Do the same thing while you're sitting at a stoplight.
Yeah, actually, I have been doing some of that stuff. And I found, in fact, one of the things that I used to do all the time is I would wear my headphones when I go biking with the dog. And I stopped doing that because I'm taking that moment at that point for my mind to do its wandering, for my mind to just be free to think and do whatever. So I've added that. But in addition to that, I'm very hyper focused, I think, on being in the here and now, especially when I'm with my family, because I noticed that I wasn't in the here and now with my family. My mind was always thinking about all the things that I would like to be getting done right now, the tasks that I have that I could be working on right now. And as much as I love my family with all my heart, some of the things that we do can sometimes feel like a time waster, not necessarily a time gainer. And when it's those moments, because not everybody is as productive as you or me in any given moment. And that's okay, because not everybody has to be as productive as you or me on any given moment. That's the reality of it. But I need to recognize that when my family needs me and it's time for me to not be productive, it's time for me just to be in the moment, because sharing space with somebody is quality to them. Then I need to be there. I need to be present. And this has really helped me do that, because I'm, like I said, hyper aware of where my attention is at the moment. And that has been from practicing these exercises. So,
good for you. That's really great. Yeah. I think it's for quite some time now, if I'm speaking to somebody and they're on their phone, I actually don't speak because I want their attention. And it's funny because reading this book, I'm like, oh, that's good. And because they'll be, go ahead, I'm listening. I'm like, yeah, you might be listening, but I don't have your full attention, and I want your full attention. Whether what I have to say is important or not, I'm going to give you my full attention. And so I was probably learning that from somewhere else before this book, but it's super annoying to that person. But you know what? I don't care. Right. I just want your attention. So anyways,
the fact of the matter is, we all know though, right? Like you know when somebody's paying attention to you and when they aren't. And we all want people to pay attention to us. We all want that. When we're talking, we want to feel like people are paying attention to us. So of course you'd pick it up just by living. You'd recognize that. But this book gives validation to that. right?
Yep, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the other thing I think is really cool that her research is showing is just this practice of refocusing your attention is expanding not just your recall, but your memory.
I thought that was really interesting.
That's fascinating and super encouraging.
Yes. And it can actually heal
Hmm?
memory, right?
Oh, yes, please. Bring it on.
Yeah. So what were they doing with the studies? Do you remember some of the studies?
Oh, gosh. Well, they still hadn't figured out like time, or they were just really picking people that had really stressful jobs, or they were just picking like college football players, and they were just
Hmm.
really randomizing their studies, and then just really working on refocusing, and it's just kind of been all over the map. But it's just that's how the chapters have unfolded. Is here's all of our research, here's all of our random studies, here's how awesome it is, and then here's how we've dwindled it down to make it um, I don't want to say
Effective.
fast, yeah, but effective in the least amount of time,
Yeah.
because that's
So
what they were.
efficient.
Yeah, because then they were
Yeah.
asked by these specifically like the Army, the Navy, and those people. Is like, okay, we need to get this to the masses. How
Hmm.
many people do you have teaching this?
Hmm.
And they didn't. They just had the people that were running the research, and they
Hmm.
were going all over the world, in bunkers, and I think one was a broom closet just to get
Hmm.
the equipment right. But yeah, so they eventually had to create like, how do we get this so we can actually train others, and then those people can go out in the world. So
Hmm.
I find that fascinating. I think now that they have these mindfulness trainers for firemen and the military and teachers, and they have all these, they don't, she didn't say a mindfulness teacher for traders.
Hmm. Interesting. So is
I
that
know.
a
So,
direction that you're looking to head?
well, like, why not?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
huge. 12
Yeah.
minutes a day.
It makes a huge difference. Now, you asked me a bit about my experience. How's your experience been so far with that? Have you been taking those times when you're brushing your teeth and eating your dinner to really focus on what you're doing, bring your attention back to it?
It's interesting. It's easier to sit there, do nothing, and then the mind wanders and bring it back. It's actually harder to be doing something, your mind wanders, and to bring it back. So that has been very challenging. The body scan, I've I've used that before from different angles. So that one's actually easier for me just because I have more practice in that, which is really my favorite. And then I started, this is really interesting because I just started doing this. There's many times where I will wake up in the middle of the night, and if I have trouble falling back to sleep, I started
Mm.
doing the body scan. I used to count
Oh,
backwards from 100, but then I started doing the body scan, and I'm falling right back asleep.
oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's funny because during the find your flashlight
Hmm.
exercises. So the find your flashlight exercises, that's where you are literally just focusing on your breath. So you're just focusing on one aspect of your breath, breathing in, breathing out, and that's all you're doing. And when your attention wanders, you bring it back to your breath,
Yep.
as Kristen has mentioned. That is what the finding your flashlight is. So I opted to count. I tried to count how many breaths I could pay attention to in 12 minutes. Do you know what my max count would be?
5.
Take It was higher than that, but I could only count for 15 breaths.
Mm.
That was it, and that was the highest I could count. And that, I mean, when I first started, it was only about 5 or 6, and I would lose track. It's not that I only took 15 breaths, because you take a lot more breaths in 12 minutes than 15. It's just that's how many times my mind would wander, and I don't know if I'd fall asleep a couple times and then wake up and come back. So it was that, and then with the body scan, I could only make it up to my hips. I've not made it past my hips. The 12
Well,
minute
it's
alarm goes
you
off,
may
and
not.
that's as
You
far
may
as I've ever
not.
made it. It's
I know,
interesting.
right?
Yeah,
But it's
I
all
think
about catching yourself. It's
it
like
is
it's all about the comeback, right? It's all
right.
about the comeback. So, and knowing it's about the recovery. That's what I found fascinating, because sometimes
Yes.
your recovery is fast, and sometimes your recovery is like, damn, that took forever to realize I was down a rabbit hole. So it's
Yeah.
fascinating. It's pretty
Yeah.
fascinating.
Exactly. Now, are you bringing that into your everyday work? Are you finding that
Hmm.
it's affecting you in that area as well?
I have yet to do that. It was interesting because one of the quotes in this book, she's actually quoting somebody else. And it was something to the effect of, if somebody says they don't have 5 minutes to meditate, then they better find 10. And I was
I
like,
love it.
okay. That made me laugh out loud.
Yeah.
That one was pretty good. But to do it in the everyday where I don't think, honestly, it's possible to have communication like we're having right now. I'm face to face with so many people over and over again. If one person's leaving the room, another person's coming back. So to take a moment to breathe, okay, well, maybe I can do it for a breath, but I can't sit there. So maybe it's lunchtime, maybe it's the drive there, maybe it's the drive home. There's plenty of time to do it there. But if I don't do it first thing in the morning, it's not happening.
But even especially for you, because you've got different clients coming in every single day. And do you remember the experience that she had where she had that, she met with that person and she started the conversation and the person finally said, can we just wait for 5 minutes or wait for a couple of minutes? He needed to decompress because he recognized that he had just come through some other experience or another meeting.
He was interviewing
call,
her.
And he was full. His whiteboard was full. He didn't have any room to process any information. So he just took a few minutes. She thought it was odd, thought it was very unusual and how unprofessional to make her wait.
Buddy.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But recognize the importance and even in, I guess, a newfound admiration for the person that actually acknowledged, hey, look, I don't have room to process the information. You're important. And I want to process the information that you're giving me right now. So just give me a second to clear my mind and make room for you.
For sure. Well, he had presence and recognition that he couldn't do it.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And so for someone like you, who you meet a different client every, 15 minutes? Maybe you've got
it's
a different
about every
client
15 minutes,
in?
but it isn't someone I don't know.
Right.
So, it's
but even
cyclical,
still,
but it's been trained, it's 25 years of doing it. So, but there is a moment in between. It's just I'm not going to sit here and meditate, but do I take a deep breath and shake it off? It'd be interesting if somebody watched me. Like yeah, I mean, I'd be an interesting subject.
You must go and do notes, though, something that transfers the information that you have currently on your whiteboard, puts it somewhere that it needs to keep, frees up that white space so that you can now process the information that you need
100%.
to for the next client. So there's definitely a step and a procedure that you go through every single client to be present for each of your clients.
100%. I'm literally writing the date and I'm looking at them with pen and paper, and we literally, that's exactly where we start at them as soon as they walk in the door. I mean, obviously if it's their birthday or they've had a grandkid, like we talk about stuff that I know. Yeah. Because it's just, you can be very personable, but if you have somebody that's straight, like they don't even know, like a new patient or something, we just jump right into, it's all about them. So pen and paper though. I did electronic notes once, and this goes back to what we were talking about. I spent thousands on electronic notes. That's the big thing. Electronic notes, easy to send everywhere. I went back to the old school. Did not save me any time. Matter of fact, the notes that are electronic are crap when I get them from other doctors. There's no personal information really in there. Like, how did you really work on this patient? But if you get my notes, like you're gonna see exactly what we did and how they walked in and all that stuff. So
isn't that interesting? On a side note, I mean that's how I feel about report cards now. No, seriously. I mean, I remember if you go back to the report cards that you and I got way back when we were going to school, there's handwritten notes with our names saying, so and so, it's been a pleasure having them in the class. They blah 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 blah, and there's actually evidence in the note that suggests that you were actually physically in the room with the teacher at the time. So now it's a generic kind of press 1, press 2, press 3, and you get the common, every single teacher's kind of saying the same thing. And
my teachers always said the same thing in the handwritten spot. She'd just be a better student if she didn't talk so much. I mean, it was like always. And then my son had the same stuff, and he was.
That's funny.
Yeah. She'd just do such a better job if she just wasn't so talkative.
There's something to be said about doing that way, right? Yeah. About actually processing that information in a way that is more in tune with your emotions, I guess, versus just a predefined. That's interesting. Thank you for bringing that up, because that's an interesting thought. But I guess the reason that I was asking you about your clients is because I think that real life examples of what we're talking about in these books are doctors, uh,
Oh yeah.
dentists,
Mm-hmm.
chiropractors, psychologists, all of these individuals that you meet with where they're meeting multiple clients on a regular basis. They've got to go through this process and they've developed habits and systems that do it naturally. So I thought that was really cool because I don't think a lot of people process that information that way. They don't understand that that's actually what they're doing when in fact they are doing it that way.
Well, they're supposed
Right.
to anyways. Well, that's
Yeah. Yeah.
interesting because the next area topic they do brush on is to stop what they call biased thinking, and
Yes.
that can affect your attention and your clarity. And then I think the one of the examples, and this, she uses a lot of military examples, a
Mm-hmm.
lot. They did I mean, if you're going to take the most stressed out people, right, like let's do it on our military. And so
Yeah.
they were the subject matter of a lot. um, but
So,
it
so
was
let,
just like that biased thinking that was helping them make some decisions and saving lives.
right. And let's talk a little bit about that bias thinking, because I think that that is one of the pillars that is really important to traders, for example.
Okay.
Because the bias thinking, I deal with this on a regular basis with traders where their bias creates takes the it processes the information that they're seeing in a specific way that matches their bias and leads them down a path that could work out or could not work out. And her example in the book, she was talking about, was it a drone pilot that was giving examples or
They were getting
giving,
ready to bomb something,
yeah,
and the
and they
guy
had
wasn't
people,
sure. Mm-hmm.
right? Well, they had people in the field, but they were told that a certain Taliban member was going to be there or that this was a Taliban camp. So they had a preconceived bias that this is a Taliban camp. And so they started to see things that kind of,
Wasn't making sense.
yeah, it wasn't making sense
It
because it
was
was going
making
to,
them hesitate. Yeah.
yeah, it was making what they were expecting to see and what they were seeing didn't match.
Yes.
And had they just gone off of the information that they were having and allowed those biases to take control, and they didn't have the sense within themselves to be able to recognize that hesitation and realize that, wait a minute, things aren't matching up, they could have
Yeah.
ended up harming a lot of individuals. Right. And so, yeah.
Well, think
What
about
are
it.
your thoughts?
Military, you're out there you've been sent there. You
Right.
are there to shoot those people, to blow
Right.
up that building. And then they sit there and have a moment of being present and being aware and saying, well, hold on a second, instead of that robotic, like, okay, I'm here to do this job.
Yep. Yep.
There's two different thought patterns, right? And I guess that they're calling it that biased thinking or unbiased thinking.
Right. I mean, look at all of the excuses that we had during World War I, World War II, those types of things where that was the excuse. I was just following orders. And those biased thoughts from whatever propaganda you were listening to or experiencing allowed you to do some of the atrocities that you were doing at the time. Like it exists all the time, right? But
Well, yeah, because we're giving extreme examples, but we're doing
oh
it
yeah,
driving down the street. We're doing it, the
yeah,
phone's ringing. Yeah, all those
and
things.
like I said with trading, that is something that happens regularly. So the idea around the whole bias thing is you need to be able to process the information at hand without that bias taking control. And that's why I think this is really important for traders to be able to center their minds, get them straight, do a little bit of some sort of a cleansing, I guess you could say, of the mind, so that that bias doesn't take over. So the information that you're processing is actually true information, and you can process it in whatever way that it's talking to you, because that's what the market's doing all the time. The market doesn't have to do what you want it to do. It's going to do what it wants to do. And you need to be able to react quickly to what you are seeing in the markets. That makes sense?
It does. And this
Yeah.
other part that they go into, which I feel like I actually have to read this chapter again to digest it, because, I think what's wrong with my brain is this bias thing around how Facebook has turned into Meta. And
Oh,
then
yeah.
this whole thing now happening around the world with the internet is this metaverse, right? Well, in
Mm-hmm.
this book, she talks about meta awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And so is that when you're kind of like taking a step back, like an overview, when you're just taking it all in?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. That's exactly what it is. So, and I think that's that's really getting you out of that egocentric position and able to get into that area where you can process way more information. It's that big scan, that big macro view, which helps in so many aspects of your life, right?
Wasn't the example of her coming home after like this really long day or something, and she comes in and the husband's been watching the kids, and the kitchen's messy or something. Like she's even not talked to him about it before, and she's getting
Mm-hmm.
irritated. She's walking in the door, and now she's like, this has happened and I've already said that I don't want this, and now she's pissed. And then she took a moment. She almost like she how do I envision it? She almost describes it as you're above looking down
Yeah,
and
it's
you're playing
almost
it
an out of
out
body experience. Yeah,
a little bit. She goes, you know
yeah,
what? Okay, so then she's like, okay, let me do what I'm teach people. Right? Let's put it in play. He's doing the best he can, all these different things. And it just, before she finally got to all of her family on the other side of the house, she had calmed down, and it was all okay. But yeah, it was interesting.
yeah. It definitely, I mean, taking the macro view or that meta awareness is, I think it's pivotal for a lot of compassion, a lot of understanding, and a lot of calmness, right? Otherwise,
Yeah.
you're zoning in on a very specific pinpoint thing that there's no absolutes, right? And that's
Well,
very black and white thinking,
yeah, the
right?
world does not revolve solely around you.
Exactly. So we will see you in the next episode then. Stay tuned.